Welcome to Hobby Clubhouse with a review of the Bandai high-grade Universal Century 1144 EXS Gundam, the retrofitted and upgraded form of the Superior Gundam from Gundam Sentinel. The Superior Gundam is the stuff of Gundam modeling legends, born from model graphics and visualized through the many works of master modelers of the late 80s. The Superior Gundam is a Gundam modeler's rite of passage, something you dare only take on knowing your work will be compared with all those masters and any others following them into that pantheon. And Bandai released their one and only update to the original 1144 kit as the 29th release of the high-grade Universal Century line, which is what we're looking at right here. Released back in April 2002 for a price of 2,700 yen, the kit comes in a pretty big box measuring 31 by 20 by 10 centimeters. The cover illustration is done by B-Craft, also known as Junichi Akutsu, who did many of the early HGUC box art. The box I have here is a re-release, so it sports the Bandai Spirit's name as well as the blue Bandai badge, which I'm still not used to seeing. The side of the box has some handsome studio shots of the MS and all its weapons, and the text gives you some highlights of the MS, all in Japanese. The other side has the front and back shot of the EXS along with some in-universe information about it. And as always, these old HG boxes aren't as densely packed with information as they are nowadays. Inside the box, we get the kit spread along 13 runners, with 3 of those being for polycaps. There is a small sheet of foil stickers, with one here for the eyes, one for the front of the chest in this yellow part, and then a pair for the grill pattern details for the front and the back of each shoulder. A bit rare here is a second sheet of clear stickers with this Gundam System logo for the left shoulder, but you also get a choice with this more classic 01 number for that same spot. This white variable MS and Wave Rider System logo goes onto the right shoulder, and this small black one goes onto this yellow part, and the other ones you can place wherever you like. This Earth Federation logo goes onto the left shoulder's wing, and so does this Earth Federation insignia. And just like the other stickers, the remaining ones are for your own free use. Then we have the instructions, with the backside giving us studio shots that work with the color guide. And then we get a good 3 pages of info on the EXS Gundam, like this page right here with detailed sketches used for this kit along with a full view of the drawing used for the box art. Then there's this other page with info on all the other Gundam Sentinel kits in stores back in 2002. It's stuff you don't get with HG kits now for sure. And the black and white side is all for assembly instructions as you'd expect. And after a bit under 3 hours, here's a completed EXS Gundam. And overall, you'll immediately notice that it's pretty color accurate right out of the box. Now of course there are some odd places lacking colors, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But there really are many details that you would have thought that on an old kit like this, they wouldn't have bothered to color in plastic. Like the incoms on the knee, and the small yellow vents on the lower legs here, and this gray detail on the eye field generator, and this yellow part on the lower armor, which is not the same as the yellow that's used on the chest vents, so clearly the designers did a little extra to represent all the colors correctly. But of course, things like the crest here on the blade antenna is also very distracting to look at, as are these yellow slits on the side of the helmet, and they're a pain in the butt to paint as well. So it's a little hard to understand Bandai's priorities here when they decided which details will be done in color and which they'll just have to let be. And another very odd thing is that it has some very good part separation, like the vents on the shoulders, which are part separated, but they're left in white. And this little vent on the armor here, which is actually its own piece. I mean, I suppose it's still appreciated, since even casual fans can easily color the vents with the Gundam marker and improve the kit quite a lot. Something else not so nice are the 2002 seam lines, like the ones running down the shoulder armor, and this one running along the length of the head, and these pretty ugly ones on the thighs. At the same time, the extra armor on the legs here hide their seams really nicely, and the lines are a natural part of the construction. The seams on the booster are also in good places, but the fit of the pieces aren't very good, and you'll get these really badly aligned parts here that'll never fit together perfectly. And then there are these unsightly ones going right along these mounted beam cannons, though there's really no way around a long tube shape like this. But it will take a lot of work to clean up this kit and prepare it for painting, it's not challenging and the work is not impossible, but it will take you a lot of time. And here's everything you get in the box, with the big beam rifle, and then 2 solid white beam sabers. And then there's a mount for the beam rifle. Then there's also this little piece here for swapping into the front of the armor. And then we get some extra hands to swap in. But we also get a lot of leftover parts from the base Superior Gundam kit here. And the question of course is, can I make the base Superior Gundam from this kit? And the answer is sadly no, because even though we have almost the entire Superior Gundam, we're missing some key components, like these 2 black boosters that attach onto this joint of the tail stabilizer. And then, we also don't get these smaller knee armor pieces without the incoms, so sadly, we don't get 2 kits in one. Something else omitted is the core fighter here. Now I know not everyone cares about a core fighter, but if it's something you happen to want, the only way to have one is by getting the plain Superior Gundam kit. Let's flip this around and see all the new parts they did add to make this EXS kit. So first we get these huge black boosters here, which throws the entire thing off balance when it's standing. And then we also get these big leg armor pieces that wrap around the back of the lower legs. And then there are these knee pieces with the red incoms inside. Then there is a Ray Dome edition for the beam rifle. And then there is a chest armor edition along with a nice round one for the crotch area. Then, there is a new mounting joint for the tail stabilizer with longer pegs, and they're reinforced to be stronger so that they hold up the big boosters. And finally, we have open palms, which the base Superior Gundam does not come with. Speaking of the beam rifle, let's look at it in some more detail. This is the Superior Gundam's iconic smart gun, which, if you didn't already know, is clearly modeled after the M56 smart gun from the Aliens movie. The gun is the same as the one you get in the base kit, and you can mount the new Ray Dome onto the base of the barrel here like so. Sadly, the Ray Dome doesn't sit very tightly, and you'll knock it out of place quite a lot when you handle the kit, and the dome itself doesn't fit flush onto the peg, so it'll rattle around, which is also disappointing. The scope's lens is completely flat, so it's best if you can find an aftermarket lens effects part to stick onto it, or else it's not gonna look that great as is. A seam runs along the length of the gun as you'd expect, but the direction changes towards the front, and the front of the barrel has a seam that'll split open and it'll always be visible. But I wouldn't say the gun is ugly or anything. The flaws are a bit hard to ignore, but the design of the gun itself is still very beautiful, and it adds a lot to the S Gundam. In fact, the kit can only stand properly with it because it needs it as a counterbalance. And the beam smart gun mounts onto the waist on the S Gundam in 2 different ways. First, we can swap in this gray part with a peg onto the lower armor right here. Now I don't understand where this peg would come from on the actual MS, so it's best not to think about this too hard. There is a poly cap inside the armor here, so the part stays on very tightly. When it's in place, you can swing this arm out of the bottom of the rifle and you plug it into the new peg. And now the gun has extra support. The gun can still be reasonably gripped by the arm, and you get something that looks like this when it's all mounted. And that's about all you get because this extra arm locks the gun in place and you can only adjust the position slightly, so it's cool, but it's also not very practical. But then we also get a second mount, which looks as if it can rotate right here, but it actually doesn't. The panel on this side opens up and you can just pry it off, and there is a little slit inside for you to reattach the panel in its open position. There is an extra handle inside which you can now swing out. This whole attachment replaces the hip cannon on the left side, and the peg is strangely long so the mount doesn't go all the way in. The ball on the mount here goes into the socket underneath the gun. And if you thought the first mount was impractical, it has nothing on this. Miraculously, the hands can still grip both handles like this right here, but this is really the only pose you're gonna get with not even a little bit of adjustment like before. It still looks good, I suppose, but even in the studio shots they shy away from this because it can't do much beyond what you see right here. Now one last problem with the gun has to do with the trigger hand, which has only one job of holding the gun, but look, it doesn't even come close to gripping it, and the gun rattles around freely in there, so effectively this hand is useless. But luckily, the regular fist actually grips the gun really nicely, which is great, but it's also a head scratcher why Bandai released the kit just like this. So next we get the plain white beam sabers, which strangely we get 2 of, which is nice, but I'm not sure how much value they really add to the kit. I won't fault them for being solid white since there's the standard for the time. Or are they? You see, the late 80s kit had this. Yeah, they have clear blue beam sabers. I mean, sure, the handles are clear blue, but we can paint something white just fine, but we can't paint something into being clear. It's kind of bad when a 2-decade-old kit upstages this much newer one. And it's a clear blue beam, which barely any of the 1/144 kits have. The Zeta Plus has them, but I can't think of any other really off the top of my head, so it's not easy to get a donor beam part to modify onto these older ones. But nonetheless, they do fit into the hand very nicely thanks to the square handles, and you'll have no problems here at all. And that rounds up the weapons. Really, it's not a lot. Next, let's look at these open palms, which are a very good addition for this kit. Hands from this era are often very blocky and poorly sculpted. But look at these handsome fellas. They're very detailed, and the pose is expressive, and they're absolutely essential to the EXS's iconic poses. So the kit gets some marks back for these simple yet much appreciated additions. Okay, on to the articulation. Starting from the top, the head has 0 tilt forward and 0 tilt backwards. And it can barely tilt at all side to side, and it's limited by the back of the head. The shoulder joint is a design very ahead of its time with a swiveling joint, but the huge shoulders can still only move so much. The arms swing out about 70 degrees, limited by the shoulder armor, and the entire arm can rotate a full circle, but if you have the backpack on, of course that'll be much more limited. The wings on the shoulder armor connect at a ball joint, so you can adjust the angle freely. The blade section of the wing connects with a peg and it pivots on that one axis. The ends of the wing blades can be extended out, but it's really not clear why it can, since the kit doesn't transform. This extension on the shoulder armor swings along one single axis. The biceps allow a full rotation of the arm. The elbow has a single joint and it folds only 90 degrees. The hands are on the ball joint, so you can adjust the angle or you can spin it all the way around. The waist has no forward or backwards tilt at all, and what you see here is really just a bad design where it rattles around like this loosely. It does technically rotate sideways on a peg, but as you can see here, it's practically only a little bit over 10 degrees end to end. The legs swing up 45 degrees, but you think they can do much better, but the big beam cannons on the side catches the back skirt really quickly. It goes back barely at all, with the extra armor on the lower leg hitting that same back skirt, so this kit would have really benefited if that skirt armor could pivot and move. Those big beam cannons attached to the thighs do swing up properly, but they won't go very far beyond pointing straight forward. But they do go back this much though. Those new knee extensions can swing on one axis, and they help a whole lot for posing this largely static kit. Now the knees do have a double joint, which is really rare for the time, but the awkward angular shape takes a little bit of manhandling to bend it to about 45 degrees. The feet swing up this much, and they go back this much. And they swing side to side a good bit, and they let you plant the feet firmly onto the ground. But let's not forget about the gigantic boosters on the back. The tail stabilizer swings on a single axis, and each of the boosters also swing along a peg they're attached to. The giant thruster bells are attached on a ball joint, but you really can't angle them freely, and they need to be pushed all the way and firmly up against the booster body. The flaps on the side swing along an axis as you'd expect, and you can adjust each of them as you like. The 4 beam cannons rotate along a peg that attaches them onto the boosters, but additionally, the top part of the cannons can angle outwards, which the base Superior Gundam kit couldn't do before. So all that means we have an MS that really doesn't give you a lot of range for posing, and it's very back heavy, so you almost certainly need an action base. Now this kit came out before Action Bases, and unlike the Hyzak, Bandai never upgraded the mold to add a hole, so you'll have to make your own 3mm hole, or use one of the fork-shaped adapters from the Action Bases. With all that said, here's a Hobby Clubhouse 3-point verdict on the HGUC EXS Gundam. Number 1. It has good part separation, but it's not consistent. The engineers went the extra mile to give you separate parts like the vents on the legs and the uncolored vents on the shoulder armor, but at the same time they left the crests molded together with the V-fin, which we almost never see even from the oldest HGUC kits. I mean, it's friendly for builders, sometimes, but it's absolutely incomplete for a straight build out of the box. Number 2. It doesn't pose at all. The EXS Gundam will basically always be in its upright standing position and nothing else. It still looks good this way thanks to the extreme contrast in the proportions, but if this isn't all you want, then you better keep away from this kit. It's a little bit sad that younger fans won't be able to play with this kit much at all if they buy it out of the box. Number 3. It's beautiful, but it's so deeply imbalanced. There's no question that the design of the EXS was treated with a lot of love from the engineers at Bandai at the time. You'll notice and appreciate the work they put into many of the parts of the kit, but you'll also be left unsatisfied no matter if you're a builder or you're just straight building the kit. So this is a kit that'll benefit a lot from a revision. Modern approaches and techniques would fix many of its compromises, but until then, make sure you know this kit's limits and check that against your expectations. So that's the review of the EXS Gundam, an important kit in the life of any Gundam builder, and also one that'll need your skills to bring it into completion. Thank you so much for watching. Come look us up on social media with updates on upcoming videos and future projects. Or hang out here some more with one of these other videos. But before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos from Hobby Clubhouse, and I'll see you next time.